People have different takes on leadership. The way I perceive it is influence. It's about influencing people to do things. Now, it's not forcing them. It's not making them do it. If people look at that as leadership, it's direction or authority. And by using public speaking as an accountability tool, everybody is doing it, including me as a trainer. By coming together with a group of folks that you have met in person, you know, like, and trust, then a lot of the barriers come down, and we really can generate some amazing ideas.
The success of your career and your organization is entirely dependent on your level of leadership. So you have a choice at this time. You can work on your leadership, or you can step aside. Now, it doesn't matter which one you choose. Don't complain about the results that you get. I am here with Dale Carnegie, Master Trainer, Jeff Cockrell today. Let's get into this. Hey, Jeff, welcome in. It's good to see you today. How are you doing?
It's good to see you, as always.
I am excited to have a conversation today about strategic leadership, and specifically about strategic leadership transformation for career executives, as well as business owners, entrepreneurs, anybody else on a mission to grow in their career. So tell us a little bit about where are you coming from today, so people know where you're at, and then we'll dive into.
Coming from Plano. Often from left field, but for our purposes here, Plano, Texas. And actually, I was just doing day one of a 3-day personal leadership program out in Tyler, Texas, just yesterday, as a matter of fact.
Oh, well, that's a good place to start. So tell us a little bit about day one. What would a candidate into the Dale Carnegie Leadership Program experience on day one for a training?
Well, it's interesting. And I see this consistently. People come in thinking, "Oh my gosh, I've heard that this is a good program. I've heard that it'll push you outside your comfort zone." And I always tell them that that's never been a big selling point for me. Somebody said, "Hey, listen, I'm going to enroll you in a program. You're going to be uncomfortable." Great, sign me up. What's interesting, over the course of the first day, when they realize that I'm really not going to mess with them, I'm really there to help them unlock more of what they have, and that everybody is much like them. So often we think we're the only person that struggles with X or Y or Z, and then we realize that people are really very similar. By the end of the day, one of my colleagues was saying, he said, even the body language is different now. As people have opened up and realized that they have made breakthroughs in that first day, and set themselves up with specific things to take action on this week, which will set them up for additional breakthroughs during the week. And then they'll be able to realize it, and I think integrate them more effectively next Monday. And then we'll continue to push them.
Awesome. Very good. I'm excited to find out a little bit more about that cohort. You and I will talk about that offline, but we'll probably share some of the stories of previous events, as well as some of the other strategic leadership training that you've done in this session. Now, at the top of the show, we talked a little bit about the best organizations are relying upon the individuals to grow in their level of leadership. So perhaps give us your brushstrokes on that. What does that mean, and how can somebody become a better leader inside of their organization?
It's interesting. People have different takes on leadership. Perceive it as leadership is influence. It's about influencing people to do things. Now, it's not forcing them. It's not making them do it. If people look at that as leadership, it's direction or authority. Not that that's bad. The interesting thing about leadership, I believe, is it can be exercised at any level in an organization. We don't have to be in a leadership role in order to have influence and to be that person that can cause things to happen more effectively, and that can exercise influence on the direction that an organization goes. And we all know people like that. And sometimes they work on our behalf, and sometimes they don't. The key is it can be developed. It's not just something we're born with. It's a skill set we can develop and we can hone and refine, as long as we're intentional about it. And as you mentioned at the very beginning, our success, the success of our organization is really based upon the level of leadership within it. John Maxwell talks about something he calls the law of the lid. In fact, in his book, The 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership, that's the first thing he talks about. And he said, no organization will rise higher than its leader. So the leader has two choices. They can grow, in which case the organization can grow, or they can get out of the way, in which case the organization can grow. Either one is okay. Just we have to be intentional about it.
So and I was going to ask you about that. So let's dive into intention. Give us some examples of some of the intentional activities that people could be involved with that would demonstrate leadership and improve the level of the lid.
One of them is when I say being intentional. So for instance, if there is something that we ought to be doing on a consistent basis, one of the commitments we make on our first day is to focus on an individual and improve the relationship with that person. person. There's a tendency to think that, well, if I have a good relationship with them, then I don't need to improve it. I don't know that that's true. I believe every relationship we have, no matter how good it is, can be enhanced. And that's ultimately what it's about. None of us have an infinite amount of time or energy. What we do is we identify, based upon the vision that we create, this is where I want to go. There are people that my relationship with them will directly impact my ability to achieve my vision. The better the relationship, the more likely I am to achieve it. So why not focus on those relationships and intentionally make them better? So one of the things that we do is we identify, here's a person, here's a specific action I'm going to employ with them. And one of the key aspects is I use the example A plus B equals C. We've all seen that equation. If you are A and the other person is B and the result we're getting with them is C, if we don't like the result, which of the two variables can we change? The only one we can change is A, but everybody wants to change B.
Yeah,
the challenge is to interact differently with that person to produce a different result. And as long as it's legal, moral, and ethical, then it doesn't really matter if it's uncomfortable for you right now. What matters is it going to produce a better result? If we're trying to manipulate somebody, in my mind, that's kind of so I'm not trying to trick them into anything. What I found is most people are actually pretty rational. We can get the emotion out of it. And one of the best ways to do that is to connect with that person so that they feel like we are equals and that we're peers and that we can talk without all that stuff. And once that's out of the way, then it's a lot easier to deal with people.
It kind of makes me think about expectations that companies have about their people.
Mm-hmm.
But also, when you were talking about what happens when people enter a classroom, there's an expectation of what's going to happen inside.
Oh, yeah.
Perhaps talk a little bit about expectations. So what is your experience there? That how are companies expecting leaders to evolve, and what are they doing about it? And then what's happening inside your classroom with training that you see is having more of a profound effect on some of the people in there, so that shifts their expectation. Perhaps give us some pointers in that direction.
Well, one of the things I've realized recently is there's a difference between education and training. Now, and it's not the label. There's a lot of people that say we're doing training when what they're really doing is education. Education is learning about something. Training is learning how to do something. And I'm not saying there's not education involved in training, but so often we do an online course or we're at a lecture and it's education. It's about how to do it. And then they're like, all right, now it's about the thing. And then they're like, all right, now go figure it out on your own. In a Dale Carnegie program, for instance, we introduce a conversation link. So often we meet people and we have that awkward silence. What do you do? And they tell us and we're gone. If I can give people a tool that can help them create a conversation that is easy for them and actually fun for the person they're interacting with, then they can create a different level of engagement. We actually practice that in the session from both aspects, both as the person who's kind of asking the questions and then the person who's responding. We get a sense of here's what I'm asking, but also here's when somebody is really totally focused on me. And we think that people connect with us when we tell them about us. They connect with us when we let them tell us. And it's intellectually, it makes sense. It's different when we experience it. So now they have a tool that the challenge is to put it into practice this week. So we've actually trained them on what it's going to be like. Now they have to do it.
So let's talk about that. So they have an expectation. The difference between education and training is clear. Mm-hmm. I experienced going into education classrooms run by the internal leadership development team, and I found them always to be less than helpful, because 5 minutes when I walk out of the room, or even the whole time I was in the room, people were looking at their phones, still working on their day jobs and not really paying much attention.
Oh, yeah.
How do you address then the consistency or the application of effort of making sure that people are taking what they learn in training and then consistently applying that into their roles so they can raise that level of the lid?
That's one of the things that I believe is unique about what we do in Dale Carnegie. We use, everybody delivers a presentation at least, well, let me see. They made a commitment to apply one of the Dale Carnegie human relations principles. That's the first presentation they're going to do next Monday. They're going to say, well, so here's what was going on. Here's what I did. Here's what happened. Here's what I learned. And as a result, here's my recommendation for you. Here's what you as an audience should do so that you can have this benefit. And by using public speaking as an accountability tool, everybody is doing it, including me as a trainer. I tell them I'm taking this program again as well. So when I deliver an example next Monday, it will be from this week. And as I'm coaching them, I'm listening for, was it done this week? The key is, it's not that they necessarily did it with that specific individual. It's not even that they did that specific principle. It's that they were intentional about doing it with somebody. And what we found is when they identify one person and one principle, it's more likely to happen. By using the report that they deliver as an accountability tool, people have an incentive to actually put it into practice.
Yeah, and that sounds to me like there's no shortcuts. That you're going to go away from lesson one, and before lesson two, you have to have done the work,
Yeah.
applied what you've learned. Otherwise, it won't embed. What do you think about that? Do you think a lot of companies are actually deploying no training, or they expect people to be self-taught or adopt shortcut practices to get to where they want, if in the absence of a formal strategic leadership program that is training?
I don't think companies intentionally do this. I don't think they're intentionally trying to shortcut it. But this was interesting enough, something Dale Carnegie kind of stumbled on when his first training programs. He tried to get on with the City College of New York, Columbia, State University of New York, and he said they all felt like they could get along without me. When he started, he had to teach a class that was so exciting that people wanted to come back because they paid by the session, and it had to be useful, and they had to put it into practice. His whole methodology developed over time was, how can I get people to do things? So one of the other aspects is, in the session, people make a commitment. We create a vision, and then based upon the vision, who are the people I need to work with, and who's the one person I'm going to focus on this week? And we have them write out a commitment, and then they tell other people, this is the commitment I'm making. I'm going to work with this person to do this thing. I'm going to try, and this is what I'm going to do in this situation. And by having a specific plan that they've thought through and talked about, they're much more likely. And then knowing that when you come back, I'm going to ask you about it. You're going to have to tell everybody, here's what happened. And the challenge, I think, for businesses, for companies, is a lot of times the trainer, they have another job. They're the manager, they're this. And this is a skill set that takes some time to develop, this ability, and it requires a different structure for the training. And it probably lends itself more effectively to some of the soft skills. But so often we think, that people can read about it and do it. I remember I was at a BNI meeting. I was talking about Dale Carnegie Training, and one of the guys said, "Well, I could just buy the book for $5. Why would I spend a couple $1,000s on and I said, so just make sure that I understand. The question you're asking is there value in being part of a structured program that I'm held accountable to implement the things that I'm learning more effective than just reading about it?" And he said, "Never mind. You answered. I withdraw the question."
Yeah. And you mentioned soft skills there. So I want to dwell on that a little bit. I want to dive into soft skills. And you talked about influence at the beginning. Perhaps tell us a little bit more. You started there. I think there's more to this than your brief opening stanza. So what is influence? What's its role as a soft skill? And then under the banner of strategic leadership, not necessarily within the container of Dale Carnegie, so broader than that, what are you seeing that as? How do you define that? And then what are the kind of key things that you think people need to be thinking about so that they can develop that skill?
Well, as I do think influence is about moving groups of people to achieve goals. It's about getting them to do stuff, not about manipulation. And part of it is it's a character issue. People that we trust, people that we admire, are more likely to have influence over us than people that we don't trust or that we don't admire. So it'd be nice to say, you just go to this one course, everything will be fixed. But it really is. It's a long game. It's a campaign, and it requires a level of integrity, of oneness, of consistency built over time. And as we move up in an organization, there are different skill sets that we're going to have to learn. And ironically, some skill sets we're going to have to go away from, because as we move up, what I've noticed is that we think we're the same person. And to a large extent, if someone gets a big promotion, they're not really different than they were the day before, but everybody looks at them differently now. And we have to, in order to be perceived the same way, we actually have to act differently because we're on a different branch in the hierarchy. We're at a different perspective. And one of the examples I use is that an organization is like a tree full of monkeys. Now, if you're the top monkey looking down, all you see are smiling monkeys looking up. Now, if you're not the top monkey, there are many differences in the view, but the monkeys looking down at you never look happy. Even if they don't look that way. So it's important for us to realize that in an organization, we may have to behave differently in order to project the image that we want. And unless we've got somebody kind of externally helping us, it's difficult for us to see that. And that's
you're talking about the person, the individual, the tree of monkeys here, and it comes back down to people.
When
we think about influence with people, what are the things that stand out to you about? Because for me, it's about leadership's about valuing people. And in an influence model, what do you think are the things that can demonstrate that value? Because that's what I think people can hang their hat on and say, okay, I know I need to value people. In my experience, if I go back 10 or 15 years, I was not very good at valuing other people because I used to think a lot about myself.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah, some people would say
Welcome to
that's
the
still
club.
true, but you get that point. Is people need the give me the tangible thing that gives me ability to influence someone without manipulating them, that shows that I value them.
Specifically, actually, there's a couple of principles that come to mind. One is let the other person feel the idea is theirs. Now, this is so many people, they substitute a different word. They say make the other person. Make, if I make them think it's their idea, now I'm manipulating them. But so many times we've been in a situation and we've thrown out an idea and either nobody paid attention to it or somebody said, that'll never work. And then 2 minutes later or 2 weeks later or 2 months later, someone says, we ought to try this. And we're thinking, I just said that. We don't have to tell them I said that. Let them, if we're the leader, let them think it's their idea. Let them think that they did it, because then we're going to have a different level of buy-in. And it's a way to, one of the challenges is we have to realize that our ego, we don't get the ego stroke from I did this. It's our ego is stroked by my team did this. I helped other people. And another one that I find is most challenging for leaders. It certainly is for me, and it has been. And being a Dale Carnegie trainer has helped me a lot, but it's still, when outside of the training room I forget it, is to be paying attention so that I can praise every improvement somebody makes. And no matter how slight it is, and then I'm not stingy with the praise. Yep. And that's when a child is taking its first steps. It pulls itself up on the edge of the coffee table and it's looking around, its head's bobbing, its knees are wobbling, takes that first step and sits down. And the parents go, loser, what is wrong with you? Oh my gosh, just get used to being in a playpen. That's not what they do. They're excited. The child took their first step, and so the kid looks and tries it again. As adults, we're really good at covering up when we're uncomfortable. We take that first step. It's every bit as difficult, and then we fall. And often it's leaders will go, well, my gosh, you're an adult, you should have figured this out. And then they're reluctant to take the next step. Now, admittedly, we're not going to go, oh yeah, all right, you did. But we do have to let them know that we're seeing the effort, we're seeing the movement. And it's not about praising them for doing their job. That's what people think, well, I don't want to praise them for doing what they're supposed to do. I'm talking about the improvements. When we're trying to help people grow, when we see them take a step, no matter how small it is, that's what we need to recognize and do it quickly. And just those two things, let them think it's their idea. And when they do take a step, recognize it. Those two things can transform an organization.
I think they're really good examples of putting other people first. And the other one is putting you in the position of serving somebody else.
Oh yeah.
You kind of said it, but I think that the beauty in that is, if you're operating and leading within service of somebody else, then you're automatically encouraging, pushing, motivating, inspiring, energizing the group.
Yes. Yeah.
By putting them out in front. I think talked about this off air and online about we both guilty sometimes of leading by pulling, when it's just much better to stand alongside somebody or just to be behind them and say, I got you. You can fall back if you need to, but you have the skills, you have the attitude required to lead this group and to take the next best action.
And the other one is another one is to challenge people to do what they can do.
Oh yeah, I like that.
And
it's two elements to that, right? Challenge to think, to act and grow.
Yeah. And it's different than saying I challenge you, because okay, whatever. There are ways to do it where we can kind of engage their ego. We're giving them a reputation to live up to, and we're helping them see that I believe that there is more for you. I believe that you can achieve this. One of my very favorite stories in How to Win Friends and Influence People is Charles Schwab goes into one of the steel mills, and it is the lowest performing mill in the system. And he is talking to the manager, and the manager is like, I don't know what to do. I have yelled at these guys. I've cussed at them. I've threatened to fire them. I don't know what to do. But Charles Schwab he happens to be in the lobby as the day shift is coming off. And he says, so how many heats did you guys run today? And they went, I ran 6 heats. So he takes a piece of chalk and he writes this big 6. That's it. Doesn't say anything. The night shift comes on and they're like, what is this? What's this thing on the floor? Well, the president of the company was here and he asked us how many heats we ran. We told him 6. Well, when the day shift comes back on, the night shift has rubbed that out and there's a big 7 there. They're like, oh, night shift thinks they're better. When the night shift comes back on, the day shift has rubbed that to 7. There's a big 10. Very quickly, that mill became the #1 performing mill in the system because he challenged them to do what they knew how to do.
Yeah.
But sometimes they'd lost the spirit of doing it.
It's a complete side issue, but I always hold Charles Schwab as an organization as a really good example of somebody who's got leadership training. That place cranks out leaders like there's no other business like it. And I work for some of the biggest billion-dollar plus companies in the world who are not a patch on what comes out of that organization. But yeah, I think that it's a side issue.
Well, it's funny. I've always wondered if the Charles Schwab they talk about is the same Charles Schwab, because
Yes.
Charles Schwab was the one who put together U.S. Steel. He bought out Andrew Carnegie and Bethlehem Steel, and he created that whole conglomerate. So it could be the same guy, but I've never been able to figure that out.
I think it is. I think it's the same guy, and we're just talking about different types of services within that conglomerate.
Yeah. Wow.
Okay. Yeah. Side story. Yeah. If you're the career professional or business owner and you need help just to move you from a point of lacking focus, feeling undervalued, maybe underserved, I would love to speak with you for an intro call. So we have 30 minutes together. There is a link down in the description next to Mark's links where you can book a call with me and we can get to know each other and learn a little bit more about your challenges and your desired reality. I can't wait to hear from you. Let's get back to the video. So I want to get back to this. So we're talking about strategic leadership and transformation specifically today. And I know that you've recently expanded your work outside of the Dale Carnegie classroom to allow people to experience, for want of a better word, hanging out with you, Jeff. And I want to talk a little bit about that. So tell us a little bit about the strategic leadership transformation program that includes Dale Carnegie experiences, but there are other components to that. And what do these other components bring that they can't find in the classroom, other than hanging out with you, of course?
Other than me, well, I don't know. To me, that's the total value of the program.
Yeah.
Actually, one of the challenges with any training program is once you're done, you're kind of like on your own. It's great when we're kind of marinating in it. Then, all right, okay, now go be successful, continue. And that's been the biggest challenge that the people talked about. As I looked at this, what I realized is that as a coach, and if I want to start running masterminds, it allows this group to keep itself accountable for a longer period of time. And then rather than do all Dale Carnegie training at once, I thought, let's go ahead and intersperse them about every 4 months. So we have a program that deals with personal leadership, the ability to connect and lead, manage, and motivate individuals. About the 4-month point, leadership training for managers, how do we take that stuff, those principles, and apply them to managing an organization? Yep. In between, we coach, we meet together as a cohort, people that have gotten to know, and when you go through any sort of training program, if it really causes people to grow, what I found is when people grow together, they actually grow together. So now there's people that we know that we can trust, that when we say, look, I've got this challenge, that they're going to brainstorm with us without any ulterior motive. Their focus will be, how do I, because they also know that they can count on you to do the same for them.
Yeah.
And
that's powerful. Yeah, there's a value of community there.
Oh, it is huge.
And I
huge.
think a big block for a lot of the leaders who have been charged with leadership, who I come into contact with, miss the feeling of belonging. They actually feel extremely lonely, especially as they climb hierarchy inside of organization.
Yeah.
You get to the top and there's only 6 of you hanging around. It gets lonely, or it feels lonely, even if the reality is different. So what about that? What are you bringing there? This connection and belonging that people report is without it. What are they?
Well, what they lose a couple of things. If they don't have it, they lose a couple of things. One is the other ideas. We've all had that situation where we've been with 1 or 2 or 3 other people, and we're focused on, hey, listen, I'm struggling with this, and everybody's pitching in. And Napoleon Hill talks about it, what he calls a mastermind, but we think about mastermind groups, and often they bring in some trainer, and we kind of get together, do a little networking. And I'm not saying that's bad, but structured problem solving, when I get to be around people who I consider to be my peers, I'm like, I'm dealing with this thing. Now, somebody may say, I've dealt with it, here's how. Or they may say, well, let's think. And now there's this, what Napoleon Hill called a mastermind that sort of happens. I don't know if it's biblical or not, but I know that in the Bible it says, whenever 2 or 3 are gathered together in my name, there also am I. And I wonder if that's not also part of this. But by coming together with a group of folks that you have met in person, that you like and trust, then a lot of the barriers come down, and we really can generate some amazing ideas. for each other.
I was watching, I haven't watched all the video, but a quick side thing about a mastermind, the community that I belong to, it's 300 odd members in there, but not everybody shows up to every single event. So typically you've got this group of hardcore of 100 who don't miss, and then there's 40 or 50 who show up every now and then. But without question, the thing that makes it sing is that collective intelligence.
Yeah.
And what I see in the founder is he did this from a very low level. And you talked about that story in the Bible of just 2 or 3 people gathering. His group was 4 people, and they called it the $25 Club. You can probably look this up and find out who it is now. And a couple of brand names in there. So if you go and find out who those 4 apostles were, you'll kind of recognize some of them. But to think that they've been doing this for decades, and over time, the amount of value they've been able to generate, not just for the amount of people as leaders they've become, but also for themselves by having that perspective of other people. I just think it's incredibly valuable. So it tells me a lot about strategic leadership transformation, your own program, and how that's different to the classroom, which in the end, you're going to leave. You're not going to be there all year long. You're going to be dipping in and out of the leadership training within the classroom. And your program's giving people an opportunity to stay connected. Like my mastermind is almost weekly, not every week, but it's almost a weekly conversation where I can meet those people and share those ideas and have those epiphanies. And I call them epiphanies because
they are.
Every week I get epiphany, and then I got to figure out, is this epiphany more valuable than the last one? And am I going to execute on that? Yeah,
I know.
All right, so let's talk about you. I kind of want people to get to know you a little bit, because you talked about like no trust. Why do you do what you do? Why do you do this? You strike me as the guide, the trainer, the coach, the leader here. So why do you do that?
Well, thanks. I struggle. It was something I felt kind of called to do, but I struggled to put it in words for a long time. And when people asked me, why you do this, I was reminded that when someone has an addiction, they talk about the fact that there's a God-shaped hole in their soul that they try to fill with whatever that addiction is. I believe that there's a James Hilliard shaped hole in the heart of God, and it waits for you, and that only you can occupy it. And I believe that throughout your life, and for the life of everybody who's listening, God works to grow you into that man or woman who will fit perfectly into that spot. No gaps, no cracks, no mortar. I believe Satan uses fear to make that job more difficult. I help overcome some of that fear. That's what I do.
Beautiful way to explain there's a place for everyone. Anyone issues with self-worth, just know somebody is looking out for you. Somebody is waiting for you. Well, and I use that phrase frequently. You've described it in the eyes of God. He's waiting for that heart-shaped hole, or that James Hilliard-shaped hole in this case. But I always think it doesn't matter where you are in your career, your mission, your family, your life, somebody is still waiting for you.
That's right. That's true.
You can feel it. You can physically feel that you always feel like there's something more for you. I think that was a great way to express what it is you do, why you do what you do. Now tell us a little bit about, let's talk about successes and failures, because a lot of people will go into this leadership training environment and be fearful of making mistakes. So, what if I can't get the concepts and actually do it? So perhaps to make them feel great, tell us a little bit about maybe a mistake you made with this process.
How many?
And then what did you do? What did you do about that? What was your lesson that you learned from that?
The hard part is not thinking about a mistake I've made. The hard part is narrowing it down.
Yeah.
To what I'm going to talk about. Oh, let me see here. I remember actually one of the times I was when I was in the Navy. I was an officer in the Navy for 11 years, and on my first ship, I was an arrogant cuss. I was a good ship handler too. I mean, we had this evolution we were doing. We were out in the Bahamas, and we were trying to make sure that the noise the ship was putting out was minimal. So we're making runs on a sonobuoy. We have to be about 200 meters from it. That's the ideal. And I had the mid-watch, midnight to 4. So I come up way early. Normally it's about 15 minutes before the watch, but I'm there at like 11 o'clock. So I'm there at 11 o'clock watching this guy do it. It's pitch black, and he's got one light. The guy who's driving the ship has one light. He's got to take a bearing on it. Then he'll hit this mark. And I was watching him, and he's hitting at about 175 meters, 210, 215. And I also noticed that he would take the bearing, and then it was constantly, he was what I would call chasing the bearing. The bearing's supposed, it's 175. Oh, man, it's going to be one, that's 176. And it was supposed to be at a constant bearing, but he was constantly chasing it. When my turn came, I remember I overcorrected. Then the bearing didn't change for me. And I was like 202 meters, 198 meters, bang on target. 4 or 5 runs, the captain goes, well, obviously you have this. I'm going to go to bed. So he leaves. The executive officer, not a very good ship handler, he starts giving me orders. The next thing, 175, 225. And you could tell from the tone of my voice, I was not happy. And at one point, he's standing out on the bridge wing, and I'm halfway in between. And I leaned out, and I said, so if you want to drive the ship, you certainly can. He goes, shut up. I'll believe you. In fact, Mr. Abbas, you take the Mr. Cockrell, you go below. So I was like confined to my quarters for the next 24 hours. He was upset. And my first lesson that I took from this was, well, obviously I'm a good ship handler, and he just sucks. As I've thought about this over the last 30 years.
Yes, finally.
I've realized that a couple of things. One is got to handle it better. Two is that humility is a strength that I often have to continue working on. And just because I'm good at something doesn't mean that I have to throw it in somebody's face. My job is to help other people get better at whatever it is you're doing. But that made my first tour rather challenging. Yeah. Because and sometimes realizing, and this realization comes just in our conversation now, is that sometimes we can make our life more difficult in an instant, which is what I did.
I was going to ask you that. So there's one misunderstanding. We can make our lives more difficult by going with our gut or by thinking that we already have the skill. What do you think of the other misunderstandings that people have about leadership specifically?
I think, as we said, it's about serving others. And one of the challenges is we tend to serve others in the way we want to be served. I hear this so often when someone says, man, I'm really frustrated because this person has so much more potential. They just don't want to advance. And I know they could. Are they doing a good job now? Yeah, they're doing a great job now, but I just know they could be better. I know they could get to the next level. Often that's not what they want. And by trying to push that person to the level they don't want to be at, often we drive them out or we make them unhappy. And then everything suffers. We want it so badly for them because that's what we would want in that situation. And that's, I think, one of the challenges is we so often want to serve other people the way that's best for the way that we want to be served. We have to serve it in what's best for them in the way they want to be served. It's the same way with delivering a message. When I was at Japan, we did a lot of work with the joint staff of the Japanese self-defense forces. And they were really, really good at English speakers. But sometimes there were things that they just didn't quite click for them. And I remember one of my cohorts, he would just speak more slowly and loudly. After a while, I'd say, listen, it's not a volume issue. It's not a volume problem. That's not going to help them. And I think sometimes we think that if they don't get it, then I need to give it the same way, just louder. No, we have to adapt. We have to tweak. We've got to figure out, how can I make this understandable the way it needs to be for them? That's how we keep people, I think, engaged. It's also how we save ourselves time, because I'm a firm believer that the person who can do the most damage to your organization is the hardworking idiot. That person who will enthusiastically work overtime, messing things up. So many times as leaders, we create them because we're not clear in how we deliver our message.
Yeah, we could dive down that conversation, a whole model of the different types of workers and which ones you want, which ones you don't want. Yep. But I want to flip it. I want to flip this misunderstandings to perhaps a client success story, because I think anybody who's got this far in this conversation is now thinking, okay, I think I get the handle of this. You can talk me through how I can have a Dale Carnegie experience. Mm-hmm. I'm going to bolt on top of that some strategic leadership experience with Jeff, but I want to know who's successful and what does a client success story look like? So perhaps give us a testimonial here of somebody who's been through your experience, worked with you, you've coached them, and you can see maybe intangible results, but I think most people are looking for some tangible evidence that this is going to be the right place for them.
Well, I remember Glenn was he had taken the Dale Carnegie course from me, and he was a sales manager, and he was doing really well in his company. And
on that point, I think it's worth saying most of the people you work with are kind of director level and above. Is that right?
Yeah, probably. I would say they are director level and above.
So they're already successful, and we're fine tuning, we're making modifications, we're course correcting, we're bearing. I could use that word. Yeah, tell us about Glenn. I only said that because I don't want people to feel like, well, I've already got some leadership here and I've done some stuff. I think there's always a reinvestment here, or there's more investment if you've missed. Yeah. Tell us about Glenn. I interrupt.
Well, I was going to say I had several years ago, I had 6 individuals who were and they were all graduates of the Senior Enlisted Academy. When it was over, they came to me and said, "This is the best leadership training I've ever had."
That's one testimony. Okay, Glenn.
Yeah, but Glenn, so he'd taken the Dale Carnegie course, and he was one of 2 national sales directors. He had basically everything west of the Mississippi, and then it was a major player in his industry, and then it was bought by a private equity firm. Now he had reached out to me for coaching. I don't know, maybe a month before the transition happened. So we were coaching specifically on high performance, about how to get people engaged. And there was he had one person who was actually I think the owner's daughter, and was managing a site and not doing well at it.
Mm-hmm.
He's like, it's the owner's daughter. I can't fix it. So we talked about what he'd like to see happen. I was able to coach him to get her to realize that was not her forte, that she actually could be more effective in some other roles within the organization. And as we finished up, and he said there were so many people that came to him and said, "Well, where'd you get this from?" He said, "Well, I got it from my coach." And they're like, "You have a coach?" He said, "Yeah, that's why I was able to do this." About 2 months afterwards, I was talking to him, and he said, about after our time was done, and he said, "Yeah, I got to let you know that I took another job." He said, "Yep, we had been talking about him actually updating his resume and starting to, and he was really reluctant. But as we talked through it, after we were done, he began making the efforts and going to a position that was paid him significantly more, and he was much happier doing that. Yeah. Your results may vary.
Yeah, that's true. But my experience of that is, certainly in my community, most people stay where they are. They don't actually move. They just be happier, more purpose-driven, experience more joy in a role where they were really struggling and really trying to figure out what's next. Yeah. And I think so. You see both parts of it. I do see people who move from place to place, and that's okay too. And I don't think there's a model that is perfect for everyone, because I think the uniquenesses were all different.
Well, we had another one that comes to mind is Terry, and he worked for a design build firm. When it was after we had, at our last session together, I was asking him, "So what's different now?" He said, "I'll bet you I'm 40% more effective on the job site." And I said, "Seriously, 40%?" He said, "Oh, at least. Oh my gosh." I've had people that have gone to my boss saying, "What have you done? What have you done to him? He is a totally different guy." Because he said, I'm able to get people to do the things that need to be done without forcing it like I used to have to. I'm able to create buy-in and a level of desire to make this happen. And yeah, so I would like to say that everything's always rainbows and unicorns, but what I find is that the bumps in the road are much smaller now, and I'm more effective at getting things done that need to be done on time, and as a result, under budget.
Yeah, I think these are compelling stories to tell people that you can grow in efficiency and profitability for you personally, as well as the organization. You can think about strip cost or do any number of tangible activities. But know that I think coming out of this experience, most people see intangible results that are more soft. That's it's awesome. Now, I want people to be able to find you.
Oh, can I also talk about one personal one?
Yeah, tell us a personal story. Yeah, we got time. Yeah, we got time.
This was his name was Dan. He was an insurance agent. He was doing well. He was a solid performer. But he said, one of my challenges, he said, when I'm at work, I'm thinking, oh, I'm with my wife and kids, and then I'm at home thinking, oh, I should have gotten this done at work. And as we had a chance to work together, he really got good at separating the two. Not in that they were not related, but when he was at work, he was totally focused. He really was focused on, okay, this is what I got to get done. And when he was at home, he said, I'm totally present. Now, it tripled his business. But what was really neat was I had a chance to talk to his wife. She said, the biggest thing, for the first time in our marriage, he took a compliment from me. He had never done that before.
Yeah, that's good.
And she started to cry. She's like, that has meant the world to me.
That's powerful, because certainly in the male communities that I speak to, they don't hear praise, and they'll often say phrases like, I give it all. Nobody ever thanks me. And I say, I think they do, but you're too proud to hear it.
Yep. Yeah, that's a good point. That's a good point. Yeah. Really good point.
And that's kind of within the community I work in. I see that an awful lot. And that's but it works both ways. I hear women too who are the major breadwinners of the company, and they'll tell me the same thing. Well, I haven't had a compliment in a while. Are you sure? What if we raise your awareness around that and see how many we can collect? And before they go, oh, he said this and he said this, and yeah, because you've been missing it because your focus and your energy was just elsewhere.
Well, okay, it's funny because
What
talk about
about
the love languages, and
Yep.
people thinking, oh, they have to do it in my love language. I think that's great, but I think also we got to realize that sometimes they mean something. They're just not saying it in the way that you want.
Yeah.
So anyway, just as you talk about raising awareness, that was what came
That's
to mind.
true.
Yeah, that's so true.
How conscious are you that you are paying attention to what's being said? Because yes, there's body language, and that's how you're communicating typically with your spouse anyway. But we can go into that whole another podcast on body language. We can invite the special guests in. I wanted to kind of wrap this up talking about that. We've told us some great stories, and now people have got something that I want to know where people can get hold of you, contact you. So where is the ideal place? Is that a personal profile where they can send you a message directly to learn more about the program, or simply have a conversation with you, or is there a website, or both? And we'll put those links in below. But I want you to say them so we can.
Well, I have obviously a LinkedIn profile, and I think Jeff Cockrell CHPC, which stands for Certified High Performance Coach, on LinkedIn, and you can send me a direct message there. And what we'll do is then we schedule some time to talk through this, because the strategic leadership transformation may not be for you. That's okay, but before anything else, we want to make sure that the right people are in it so that we can maximize the benefit for them and for the other folks. I also have a website, www.jeffcockrell.com, and I'm also creating a website specifically targeted to veterans to help them make this transition into the civilian world, called Veteran Academy. So www.veteranacademy.com.
All those links we'll drop in below so people can click on them. So if you're watching this, or you haven't already clicked on the description, you'll go down there. You'll be able to see the links. Some of you may have already clicked on those links while you were watching us, so you could see some of the things that Jeff's up to.
And I'm just getting ready to launch a planner on Amazon, which is based upon the planning process we used in the Navy, whether it was on an aircraft carrier, on a small frigate, 5,000 people, 150 people. But it was a planning process that can be adapted to us as individuals or to our teams for greater success.
Yeah. As soon as that's published, let me know.
I will. Get our team to
put
that should be here in the next couple of weeks.
And that gives somebody an opportunity to go and pick that up off Amazon. And I'm assuming, what is that, a few bucks? Is it a lot of bucks? How many bucks?
Probably. I'm thinking probably $17 or $18. It's about 60 pages long.
I love a $20 solution. I've got a whole room full of $20 solutions.
Oh,
I see you've got a whole room of $20 solutions too.
I do.
Yeah. What's inside the page is vital. I really enjoyed this. It was the first time we've sat down for a podcast. We've known each other for, I think, 18 months, 2 years now.
Oh my gosh. Doesn't seem like that long.
Yeah, it's coming. Yeah. It's gone fast. But in that time, we've been able to create a lot of value for ourselves, but we've also been able to now create a lot of value for you guys as well. So thank you for listening, Jeff. Thank you very much. I'm looking forward to
Thanks, James.
Real soon in another community. Hey, James, jumping in at the end here. I want to make sure that you enjoyed that video. And if you did, I would be delighted if you come and join me in this next video right here. So when you get there, we're going to teach you some more tools, strategies, methodologies that are going to change the way that you operate inside of your career. I'll see you inside.